Last week, he even had to deny he is senile.
For months when you were asked about your age, you would respond with the words, "Watch me." Many American people have been watching and they have expressed concerns about your age.
That is your judgment. That is your judgment. That is not the judgment of the press.
The 81-year-old insists he is ready for a second term, but is he really? If Biden were to relinquish his position, Vice President Kamala Harris would automatically become president. She says she's ready to serve and has touted her capacity to lead. But is the world ready for President Harris? Our next question for the jury: should Kamala Harris take over as US president? Joining me now is Sky News host James Macpherson, who thinks Joe Biden's time is up, and Darren Barnett, former press secretary to Labor Prime Minister Julia Gillard, and McKell Institute fellow, who's a little more sympathetic to Joe, you would say. Good to see you.
A man at the top of his game.
A man at the top of his game. Good to see you both. Well, look, Darren, we'll start with you. Like him or leave him, Joe Biden is the democratically elected president. Does that undermine democracy and the will of the people by automatically putting a President Harris in?
Look, I think the fact that the election is not far off changes the nature of the question. I think a different question is whether he should stand for a second term, and there are legitimate concerns around that. But I don't think he should stand down now, particularly with that proximity. Well, the administration is still doing a job, and people will decide whether that's a good job when they vote later in the year. Now, if you put Kamala Harris as president, there's a very reasonable argument that's not who people voted for as president. It also upsets the balance of votes in the Senate in particular. Would you then be able to get approval of the House of Reps and the Senate for a new vice president, which is something that would need to be done at an administrative level? So I think in what is already a country with some political turmoil, and that's not just around President Biden, but the most likely Republican candidate, Donald Trump.
Yes.
His last 72 hours have carried with it some drama about courts in New York. I don't think we need additional drama. So therefore, I think we run with the status quo for the time being.
I feel like there's a bit of drama already, to be honest. And we haven't even got to the US election yet. But James, realistically, we talk about Joe Biden's cognitive ability all the time here. If he makes it now to November, isn't a vote for him really a vote for a President Harris?
Well, I mean, Darren says I don't see why Biden should be replaced now. I agree with you. He shouldn't be replaced now. He should have been replaced a year ago, 18 months ago. We've got a pot plant sitting in the Oval Office, and everybody knows it. Yeah. Even the special counsel said they would not prosecute Joe Biden, though he had clearly broken the law by keeping classified documents, but they said they couldn't prosecute him because he's not fit mentally to stand trial. You can't say he's not fit to be in a court of law, but he is fit to sit in the Oval Office. Those two things cannot be true at the same time. Now, Kamala Harris is a dunce. We all know that, but at least we know who the president would be. With Joe Biden, we've got someone sitting in the Oval Office who is clearly hiding those who are truly running the United States, and I would appeal to the jury, would you rather a dunce, but at least you know the dunce you're dealing with, or a mannequin whose strings are being pulled by people you don't know?
Darren, she's made quite a lot of failures.
I'm not advocating for Kamala Harris to be the president. I'm really not. I wish that she had been more successul, frankly, that she was an obvious person to take over the job.
She's taken a real passive role, really.
She has. And
could she be a bigger failure than Joe Biden? I mean, Joe Biden's failed on an epic proportion.
But I think what you're suggesting, do we want a figurehead with a sound administration, or do we want a Trump presidency?
I would dispute that there's a sound administration.
Or do we want a Trump presidency where people were appointed who had no experience in their portfolio areas? There were a range of replacements and sackings. Whether you like Donald Trump as a president, it was a chaotic time for heads of departments.
And yet the economy was going well. We had peace around the world. Joe Biden became president. The world has gone to hell in a handbasket. Enact the 25th Amendment. Replace him with someone who is mentally stable.
All right, I want to ask the jury, Sean, Joe Biden or Kamala Harris?
Well, I mean, it's kind of pick one or the other of a bad bunch, you know.
Yeah.
Like James said, it's kind of they're kind of both pot plants, really. One's indoor, one's outdoor, I guess. But, you know, I agree with James as well that since he's become president, it's kind of, he's lost control of, he's supposed to be the leader of the free world.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously. I don't know about that, and the way that the world is going now, we need some leadership and some strength and some forthright to be able to communicate with other world leaders, which this bloke's just not doing.
Hannah, what about you? Do you like Kamala Harris?
No.
Why?
I think that she's an equal disaster that Joe Biden. But perhaps it is a smart move to actually replace him. Because if people don't like her very much, which statistics show, it might be a very strategic way of avoiding both of them on the presidential position.
I think that's actually a fair point, James, because right now we've got Joe Biden, a lot of issues there. But if you were to put Kamala Harris in, I wonder how the Republicans would feel about that. How would she go against Donald Trump, put it that way?
Well, neither of them will win against Donald Trump, and that's the point. They're doomed either way. But again, my argument is that we all know Joe Biden is not running the country. I mean, half the time he can't remember who he is.
No.
And so the problem is you've got a democracy where we don't really know who's pulling the strings.
No.
So at least have Kamala Harris and you know who you're dealing with.
We're running out of time, but realistically, those two candidates, Kamala and Joe, both of them, they're not great.
Roll Trump in, and that's 3 unfit candidates. So, look, I think it's actually a tragedy that we can't come up with a better contest.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, you've both had your say. It's time to call on the jury. Jurors, should Kamala Harris take over as US president?
I'm saying yes for the reasons that the Republicans would love it. It's a slam dunk for them.
Okay, time is up. What is the jury's verdict? 1 yes, 2 yeses, and the rest of you voted no. Susan, why no?
I just think it's a whole joke. American politics. I think Joe Biden is just a disaster, but I think Kamala Harris is equally just a disaster. I mean, what's happened to that southern border? She was supposed to be in charge of that southern border, and look at it. It's an absolute disgrace.
Yeah,
so I don't think putting her in is any better than keeping Joe till the end.
Yeah,
and then getting rid of both of them.
Immigration certainly has not been one of her strengths, that's for sure. Peter, you wanted to say something on it.
I think the first woman to be President of the United States is going to be under enormous scrutiny, far more so than any man. And when the first woman gets up, perhaps Nikki Haley, you want her to be competent and to give her a good chance. You put up Kamala now and she's picking up. She's only got 6 months before she'll get crucified. So give the first woman a good chance.
Yeah, look, and I think that's a very fair point. No matter what, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens between now and November. There's never a dull moment in US politics, is there?
It makes Australian politics look comparatively
boring.
Yes.
Totally boring. James Macpherson, Darren Barnett.
Let's have a Nikki Haley versus Michelle Obama presidential election.
I wonder how that would go. That might be interesting. Darren Barnett, James Macpherson, good to have you on. Thanks for joining us.